And with that, we are ready to start with our first presentation. Tobias Prenzel from Milence, a CPO focused on building Europe's largest public charging network for heavy-duty vehicles, and who just recently made headlines because they opened their first charging hubs here in Germany, which is Milence's fifth market in Europe. Welcome, Tobias.
Good morning.
Good morning. Tobias, Milence wants to have a total of 70 charging hubs before the end of next year. That's quite a short timetable. Is that realistic?
Well, it's certainly not unrealistic, but as every charge point operator, we have a few dependencies to, permitting procedures, grid capacity being secured that we have not all in our entirely in our control. It's our ambitious target, and we're working towards it every day.
All right, your presentation, building Europe's largest public charging network for heavy-duty vehicles. Tobias, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Carla, for being here today and for having me. And I'm here today to show you a bit of an update, because I assume many of the audience know Milence already, know what we have been set up to do. So I'm focusing on a status update rather than a usual introductory company presentation. But for the ones that don't know who we are, Milence was founded by the major OEMs in the heavy-duty transport sector, Volvo Group with the brands Volvo Trucks and Renault Trucks, the Traton Group with the brands MAN and Scania, and the Daimler Group with Mercedes-Benz, basically as a commitment to the electrified long-haul heavy-duty transport. And we are set out to build Europe's largest public charging network for those vehicles. And we are already making strides towards our target. Just a few technical difficulties. I hope here we go. All right. So from basically starting out with a few dots on the map, next year will be all about kind of building first corridors to electrify the heavy-duty truck segment. And let's start by having a quick look at how we expect the market to develop in the coming years. Considering there are only about 7,000 to 8,000 heavy-duty electric trucks in the market today across Europe, which is obviously a quite marginal number. We expect this to heavily grow, very fast grow in the coming years, to about 400,000 electric heavy-duty trucks by 2030, and a market share of new trucks sold of about 50% by 2030. And why is that? Starting now, at the end of this year, with all the announcements of the many OEMs, trucks are available with the capacity to charge very quickly the necessary electricity to go again around 300, 400, 500 kilometers, and with an initial range as well of about above 400 kilometers. That, in combination with regulatory conditions that on the one hand side drive the OEMs to reduce CO2 emissions across their sales, but also on the customer side that are very much committed to reducing the CO2 emissions in their supply chain. And that together will lead to quite rapid growth of the market. But how many public fast charging outlets are needed in Europe to meet that demand? Based on our modeling, and I think, obviously many assumptions go into that, but primarily I think important for this discussion later on in the panel is we assume 30% of the charging demand to be provided by a public charging network like the one of Milence. And for 2030, we believe that around 11,000 charging outlets are needed to meet that demand. Another interesting number the Fraunhofer Institute came up with 1,000 optimally placed charging locations across Europe could already enable 91% of the truck traffic, which is interesting to put in perspective a few other numbers flying around the public sphere. And happy to discuss that with the other guests and presenters later on. Let's come to Milence's ambition. Our ambition is to build up and operate 1,700 charge points by 2027, and obviously don't stop there, but go beyond that. What do we do as Milence? We build and operate charging hubs for heavy-duty trucks, and how those look, let me show you on the next slide. It's all about a dedicated place for a heavy-duty truck to be charged. There are no passenger vehicles allowed for it. The whole design and setup is made for heavy-duty trucks. It's all fenced and secure areas with access control, so only heavy-duty trucks can enter and charge. We have a drive-through layout that reduces the risk of injuries or accidents, because the trucks can just drive in, drive to the charger, plug in, charge, and then drive out without ever reversing. And obviously all that charging capability is only possible with high-tech infrastructure under the tarmac that we build to really are future-proof with our sites. All the sites are modularly set up, so we can build from 4 charging bays to beyond 20, as we have already in Antwerp, but I'll show you that later on. Another important aspect for our charging network is the integration of the MCS standard. So to enable charging power beyond the currently available 400 kW, the megawatt charging standard is super important, and as always, we're a bit ahead of the market, so we will deploy the first 5 megawatt chargers at 5 locations of our network in the coming month to enable the first corridor, an MCS corridor from Antwerp, the port of Antwerp, up to Stockholm in Sweden. As we see, this is necessary for later on in the market to really enable the longest of distances with heavy-duty trucks. Further on, just to kind of put it a little bit in perspective, we are obviously a public charging network, and nevertheless we see a complementation of charging in the depots and in public to make this transition to electrified fleets possible. We have learned from speaking to customers that attempted or have been working on building up their depot charging hubs, that there is a real necessity and also an advantage to public charging hubs to be deployed, because also companies that try establishing the depot charging on their hubs face grid congestion, similar challenges as we do, are faced with high investments to get the grid capacity necessary to charge their entire fleet in the future. And also the efficiency of a private charging hub is not having a great impact on the cost per kilowatt hour. So we see that really as a complementing factor, but also as a startup of electrification, our Milence public charging hubs are really key. We have the possibility that depot owners don't have to move up and down the highway 5 to 10 kilometers to find that plot of land where grid will be available. But in essence, both will be needed. Coming to our network, Carla, you mentioned already the 70 hubs that we do have secured today. Contractually, that means about 570 charging points that we are planning to deploy in the coming year across these 10 markets that we are currently focusing on. And maybe just picking up your point or your question from earlier, is it realistic? You know, I think more importantly, what I've learned since we have communicated these 70 locations that will come eventually to the market, we got a sense that this really increased the confidence in the public network massively and enabled both carriers, hauliers, but also shippers and load receivers to plan their next leap forward in terms of electrification. Engaging with us in identifying the sites that are needed the most out of the 70 or in the meantime 80, 90 locations that we have contractually secured. So I think rather than the number at the end of 2025, it's really about creating that confidence and enabling companies to transition, taking away the uncertainties out of the equation. Good. Where we are today, just kind of giving a bit of an insight on our network across the different markets. I hope this animation kicks off. Here we go. So across the different markets, we have in the UK our first site going live at the start of the next year. We're already live with Venlo in the Netherlands for quite a while, and Antwerp, I believe, around sometime this week in Belgium at the Port of Antwerp. The next site will go live. France, we will take another 3 sites live before the end of the year. Others are being in the various stages of deployment. Also further south in Spain and Italy, we plan to go live fairly soon in the coming year. And Germany, as you stated correctly, Carla, we have taken live our first 2 sites along the A9 between Berlin and Nuremberg, and many more to come in the first half of next year. Sweden as well, we're already live in Sweden with our site in Varberg, and both in Sweden before the end of the year still, and then in Denmark early on next year, further sites will come. And what that means already today is that we can electrify quite a lot of routes already with those sites currently in construction or already in operations. So what you see here is a map of Europe, obviously, and we have assumed vehicles with a realistic range in between or just below 200 kilometers and then up to 360 kilometers in light green. And just by those sites that we have already in operations and under construction that I mentioned earlier, this is what is possible already, right? So I think that also shows our target groups that we are now engaging with and trying to help transition over to electrified fleet. Then again, here a little bit of a deep dive, taking some of the example routes that are already possible with the sites today. I mentioned the route between Berlin and Nuremberg already, but also down south, going from Lyon via Béziers, one of our sites that is going to become live before the end of the year, down to Barcelona, using our site in Perpignan, right at the border. Also up in the Nordics, from Malmo, using Varberg, going up to Gothenburg. A lot of travel electric, a lot of electric heavy-duty travel is already possible today with our network. How can it be used? We are connected to a number of e-mobility service providers for heavy-duty truck charging. So cards like DKV, UTA, all the OEM charge and service cards are connected to our network, but we also offer direct access via the app or credit card payment terminals to make charging as easily as possible and at a competitive price point of 39.9 cents per kilowatt hour. To finish my presentation, a few insights on our hubs who hasn't seen what we have been built and what is already live in operations, this should give you a good insight on what is possible, what is there already today, and enabling heavy-duty electric transport. All right. That was it from my side, from a presentation. So I think I've been a bit quicker than intended. So lots of time for questions, if you have some, Carla.
I have plenty of questions. Tobias, Milence builds its charging station, or its charging hubs, I want to say, in two stages. First, you set up CCS chargers with 300 to 400 kilowatts, and later you add the megawatt chargers. And I said that you just opened 2 hubs in Germany, and there was a peculiarity in the press releases. You didn't mention MCS. Is it not planned there? Is it not coming, or was it just missed?
I think it was missed, and we certainly planned MCS, and I think we also stated that last week. But just for example, in the site at the Hermsdorfer Kreuz, where we had our launch event last week Thursday, you may have seen kind of this first row of chargers, which today is in operations, with basically 8 bays for CCS charging, and then you have this green stripe in parallel to that, and all the roads are already prepared to equip and add basically another 8 bays, and some of those 8 bays, if not all, are planned with the MCS standard.
Okay. You showed in your presentation a few of the corridors and a few of the routes that are already possible thanks to Milence. Now, just for my understanding, that is including depot charging, right? Or is it just with public charging?
It does assume a fully loaded vehicle to start their journey that then can be charged en route via Milence to add another X kilometers. But basically, the map, what it shows is the radius of 180 to 360 or 80 kilometers be around our hubs.
And you said there's 10 markets that you're focusing on. What's the 11th market?
Well, we have those 10 markets, right? And but we also have always said that if there are opportunities, let's say in Norway, in Austria, in Switzerland, in Poland, to find plots of lands that are viable, that are feasible, then we're going to use those opportunities, right? So I think this is our intention, is to electrify the entirety of European heavy-duty transport, orientated at the TEN-T network by the EU, So it's in scope, but focus countries are the ones that we are looking at first.
Okay. Well, the reason why I'm asking is because obviously in logistics, the corridors or the transportation routes are well known. So you know kind of where to look and kind of go back from maybe Europe, go looking east, or, and so on. But it's sticking with those 10 markets, the crux when operating across Europe is that you have a lot of local regulations and different ways of working. What is the one thing you've come across all markets, good or bad?
Well, I think what's challenging, to start with the bad and end with the good, what's challenging is like you say, the differences, but also in countries like Germany, where we have 800 DNOs or grid operators, the differences in the permitting and the requesting of grid capacity are quite the challenge, and that is sometimes better, sometimes worse when we look at the international comparison. But it remains a challenge, especially the grid congestion. And in countries like France, we see some good examples, or things are easier. Other countries where we are challenged more. I think what all markets have in common, I think, is the customer side, is the side of the ones. We encounter quite a lot of companies, both on the carrier or haulier side and their customer side, so the shippers, the load receivers, that are already making moves, right? They have already electric trucks running based on the technology available today with less range, and they're learning and it's working already. So we see a lot of optimism there and confidence in buying the next batch of electric trucks, and now identifying also what is possible using the Milence network to go even further and have higher yearly kilometers, and therefore increase the efficiency of their operations as well with those vehicles.
All right, Tobias, thank you so much. I have plenty of more questions for you, but I will save this for the discussion round.